Welcome to Gunship.
Hello everyone. We're getting closer to the party. When is the party? 8 o'clock? Just waking you. Okay. So that was good talk, and I'm just going to share what is the IDE choice at the TiVo. You could be using different choices right now. I'm going to cover a little bit on outline what I'm going to talk about. First, I'll share how TiVo evaluated the existing IDE choices when we started off, and then why we invested a little bit time on IntelliJ IDEA's Haxe plugin development, and some of the snapshot of features we implemented over last 8-9 months, I think, and what is the landscape today, the choices that are there, and what else we plan to invest some more time on, and any question and answers. So when we started off with Haxe as our choice for development platform for moving towards away from Flash, so one of the questions that definitely came up was IDE choice, because there were close to 70 Flash developers who would embark on, slowly onto Haxe development, and it was important how their productivity is going to be. So TiVo evaluated a little bit more than basic semantics and refactor. So Todd Kulik and Richard Lee were initially the ones who did some research and put together a nice wiki page internally so that we could see what are the IDE choices out there. And this was probably somewhere around 2013. We looked at the multi-OS support, multilingual promise. What does that mean is we have teams that are targeting HXCPP and C++ backend and Android and iOS and some people on JavaScript and different teams. So being able to write code in Haxe, and also whether they can debug and do kind of stuff in different platforms, and whether it is free, whether we can modify if we want to, all these kind of features. Some of them are pretty easy to understand that most of you evaluate for your own usage, like syntax, live parsing, code outline, bunch of stuff like that. But the multi-OS, multilingual promise, and multi-build projects, if you see on the top, because we should be able to load a large project and being able to build unit tests and HXCPP targets and also Android projects, all these things, how much the IDE supports. At that time, if you see, a lot of IDEs are supporting different features. So I want to have one disclaimer. I'm not really comparing and saying which feature is better or which IDE is better. I'm trying to share with you what at TiVo we saw at that point of time, and how we chose one of the IDEs at that point of time. So you see, a lot of features are more supported robustly in Flash develop at that point of time, and Sublime text a little bit, syntax highlighting, stuff like that. At that time, I even looked at Power Flash or FTT, because that was one of the good Flash IDE at the time. But most of the in-house developers that TiVo had were already using IntelliJ IDEA for Flash development, and close to 70 people. So it was clear for us that for our Linux and Mac OS based developers, we have to go for one of the cross-platform IDEs, and it makes sense since they're already using IntelliJ IDEA to invest some time on that. So when we looked at IntelliJ IDEA and looked at the Haxe plugin that it has, it was not open source at that time. We reached out to Jetbrains. Fedor Korokto, I think, developed most of the initial IntelliJ plugin. He did a pretty decent job. It was really good to get started with, and most of people started using it. But the main problem at that time, what we saw is it was not open source. We requested JetBrains to do that, and they made the IntelliJ IDEA Haxe plugin open source. The first problem that we saw is IDEA has a program structure information that is internal to it called TSI, and it's an open API that they developed, and they have something called as openapi.jar that what they did is they initially, most of you know that IntelliJ started as a Java IDE, and they generalized it so that other languages can easily use the common stuff like syntax highlighting and most of these things, white spaces, AST, and all these are common for most languages. There may be language-specific features, but they abstracted it out into OpenAPI and program structure information. The Haxe plugin that was implemented at that point of stage, it has a PSI that is being exposed, but it was not compliant to IDEA means IntelliJ IDEA's OpenAPI. So even though that was internally developed by their own team members, it was not compliant. So what that means is when we try to see if refactoring can be implemented and if class hierarchy can be implemented, like some of the features that developers use to see the code outline, these were not any great. When you look at Sublime Text, you can see syntax highlighting, stuff like that. That was lightweight and pretty easy to use, and IntelliJ IDEA was also providing some basic features like that, but it was not supporting the naturally powerful features that it has for Java, for example, Java IDE. So we compared and see where was it lacking, and it's the PSI or API compliance that they have internally to their plugin, which was essential for their code analysis, code completion, structure views, refactoring, and all this stuff. So we, at TiVo, we thought we'll invest some time in fixing that stuff up because a lot of developers would need these features. And we started fixing the PSI structure and implemented that whole PSI API compliance. But we did not do any stub-based PSI. If you are familiar with IntelliJ IDEA plugin, some people are contributing from open source community. So what stub-based is, let us assume you are importing a class, import whatever class name. The Java IDE, what it does is, it doesn't actually parse the whole class. It gets that meta information of the class from the jar files, meta information files, stuff like that. But in Haxe Libs, it was hard because we didn't have a way to just have that meta information somewhere stored. It's all the source code. So we had to scan the whole file. So for now, we implemented it based on the AST generator from the whole file scanning. So you wouldn't know the difference. It's not slow, but we know that's a performance improvement that can be done by going to stub-based API, which IntelliJ IDEA, other plugins too. And but this AST-based PSI tree is better because Haxe compiler generates the AST that we can integrate into easily instead of the BNF generated AST that internally IntelliJ IDEA does. So we did all this, and we tracked the issues. We spent time in actually making a log of all the issues in the IDEA plugin and put it on the GitHub over there, and we fixed them, and unit tests were broken. We fixed all the unit tests, and pretty good code coverage is there right now. If somebody is using IntelliJ IDEA, or you want to use IntelliJ IDEA for Haxe development, and if you find an issue, now you have a place to go and report it. Earlier, we were not getting that support from Jetbrains because this was not their priority at that point of time, Haxe plugin. They were doing a lot of improvements to the IDEA. If you have been recently using IDEA's latest features in debugging, when you look at the code, right there in the code, it shows the values. And it's pretty neat if you're a Java, if you're experienced with their Java debugger. And I thought, why shouldn't we get it as Haxe developers? When I'm developing an HXCPP app, I would like to see my variables values right there in the code and, a little more productive, right? But we're still a little far away from there, but unit tests are fixed, and we want to make sure if somebody is contributing, they're able to run the code, unit tests, and see whether the code is covered and all that stuff. And continuous integration is enabled. Yannick enabled continuous integration using Travis. And so what are the features that got implemented because of the work we did in the PSI is now, I'm going to show a quick demo of what are these features so that you know what I'm talking about if you are unfamiliar with them. So structure views, type hierarchy, and method and call hierarchies. I'll quickly show. So this is one of our projects. This is our project, And if you have a class like this, and if you press Control H, it gives you the class hierarchy on the right. So it's neat because I can see all the classes that it is implementing. This is a super class view, interfaces and classes that it is implementing. And I can also see all the subclasses of it. So it's nice way if you're used to it. So this was not working before. And then we also have nice structure view here where you can see the internal methods and based on the base class hierarchy and all that, it's clearly demarked. I'm trying to go to one of the, okay. So if you have a method like this, and if you, I'm not that savvy with the keyboard shortcuts yet, so. Okay, if you see this method hierarchy, what it does is it generates all the subclasses list that are implementing that. Wherever the plus sign is there, it is implemented. Minus sign is just using the superclass method. I thought this view, some of these views that developers are using it, these features they were not able to use once they moved to Haxe from the Flash, and they were already used to this. All these were broken, and now they are working. And if you are not using IntelliJ, and if you are somebody who wants to use IntelliJ kind of idea on Linux or Mac OS, so then now it is very functional. And IntelliJ has IntelliJ IDEA, the new Haxe plugin. I'm talking about Haxe plugin, not the IDE. It generates a quick class diagram for you if you are interested in that. This is more deeper actually. The functionality, you can see that it said building Java class diagram. Actually, I'm going to fix that. It should say building Haxe class diagram. There's text, just text. So this is actually very powerful tool. This is not completely implemented, but we are at a good place. You can actually right-click something and expand the class and start refactoring right here in the diagram, saying that push the variable down, pop up the method, and it updates the class diagram showing which other classes are getting affected. That UI updating we haven't implemented, but we implemented the refactoring, like pushing and pulling down, stuff like that. So I guess, where am I? Okay, so you saw the type hierarchy, method hierarchy, and code inspections analysis. What I mean by code inspections analysis is it suggests optimizations, like if your if statement is always going to be true, or something that needs to be optimized. It gives those kind of suggestions, which were not working in Haxe plugin. Now they are working, and it gives code hints how you can optimize. And advanced refactoring. The word advanced refactoring, I don't know if I should call it advanced refactoring. I saw Power Flasher FTT help page where it says basic refactoring and advanced refactoring. Basic refactoring is renaming a method. Advanced refactoring is pushing a method down or pulling a variable up. So that's why I said advanced refactoring. It's not a choice of term that I picked up, but stuff like that, code generation like getters and setters, and if you are implementing an interface, it automatically populates all the methods for you. If you are implementing a abstract class, it overwrites some methods for you. You can pick which ones generates constructors. All these, the reason I'm putting this on the slide is these were not functional before. Now they're all functional. These are the features. And code completion. IntelliJ has its own internal code completion engine. What it does is when you press some variable dot, it populates, quickly shows you the variables and methods that you can start choosing, and code hint of the variables, that parameters in the function. But what it does is while it is doing that, if you did not select anything, it starts calling the Haxe compiler for code completion for more detailed, reference resolutions and all those populations. So that's a little slow. It takes like a couple of seconds to come back, but most of the time you would usually do right there. You pick the stuff, and better indexing and find usage is more complete. HXCPP, if you're a HXCPP debugger user, HXCPP debugger integration is complete. It was broken in between a little bit with the Haxe 3.1.2 release and some changes to the debugger. Yannick is the one who actually did the OpenFL Lime toolchain integration. Brian Ishko did the debugger integration. Eric and myself did most of this, and Boyan was a big contributor to it from Haxe Foundation. He is very actively involved day-to-day communication with us, and right now, if you're familiar with IDEA, you know all these versions are supported. The latest release is 14.1.3. We are going to go forward with 14.1.1 and going forward supported. This is probably the last release where we'll support 13.1.5 or whatever. And MUnit, you know, massive, Mike Steed does MUnit development. I interacted recently with him. I'm trying to get MUnit integration more deeper. It's partially implemented. So just to give you a snapshot, I showed you this, how it was then, how it is today. So most of the other IDEs also have some good work done. I know Sublime Text has pretty good work done recently for Haxe development and Flash develop also. So if you see, the chart has more icons filled, and you can also see IntelliJ IDEA Haxe plugin has more icons complete. It has Flash debugger. When I say Flash debugger, you can actually debug Haxe code when you're running the Flash debugger. And when you run HXCPP debugger, you're actually debugging the Haxe code. Whereas when you go for Java target, what happens is your Haxe compilation generates the Java target, and you're not debugging the Haxe code, you're actually debugging the Java code in the IntelliJ. Same with, now IntelliJ IDEA has recently made some changes. If you know, IntelliJ IDEA is one IDE, and Jetbrains has another IDE called WebStorm, where it allows the live editing of JavaScript and HTML and debugging and all that. You can add those things into IntelliJ IDEA as small plugins. So if you are using IntelliJ IDEA with Haxe plugin, you can start doing the live editing of JavaScript and HTML code. I haven't really tested it. They claimed it recently that you can do it. So I'm not really going to say it's not my product. So, but Haxe, if you are using Haxe plugin, we still have to test it out, how neat that integration is. But you still cannot debug the Haxe code in that case. There's still going to be Haxe code generated, debugged in JavaScript or whatever. So it's in a good shape. Just to give you an idea, there is a release just made 29. That's like right before we came to the conference. Very stable version of the plugin. So if you're getting the latest version of IntelliJ IDEA and you download Haxe plugin, you can get the latest version, which is quite stable. And one more thing I want to mention is, earlier it was not supporting the community edition, which is a free edition. You had to have ultimate version to actually download the Haxe plugin. Now we support the free edition. If you have, you don't have to really buy IntelliJ IDEA to start programming in Haxe. You can download the community edition, and the plugin works with the community edition. So that's cool. So what is the roadmap? Eric Bishton is in communication with Simon about compiler integration. I don't know whether Simon is actually doing that right now, but we wanted some more features from the compiler so that we can have more powerful code completion and find usages and all that kind of stuff. And that is not specific to IDEA. It is generic to all IDEs. Whatever that gets implemented there, probably can be done for Flash develop and other IDEs as well for better support. So this is the roadmap. Now I have a roadmap document on the GitHub, which is more complete of, we have issues and roadmap of a lot of things that can be done. This is the GitHub repository where active development is happening. TiVo IntelliJ Haxe repository. Jetbrains IntelliJ Haxe repository is not active, but what we are doing is, as we are in a stable, once we come to a stable state with a bunch of features we're implementing, we are pushing it to the Jetbrains so that it's always available for everybody else. And Boyan is making the release on Jetbrains repository. I just heard yesterday that we also got access to Jetbrains repository, so we can also start doing that. So this is a master list. Now, what this slide shows is where TiVo is going to still invest some time on, because master list has more items that people can work on. If you are interested in contributing to the IntelliJ Haxe plugin for Jetbrains IDEA, what you can do is you can go to that GitHub repo and pick up the one that matters to you. And if it is not on this list here, you can start, helping. It's in a very good shape right now to contribute to. And some of the things are, immunity integration. Like many of our developers are used to just right-clicking a method and just running a unit test or generating a unit test. That is not there at this point of time. I can show you. Where it is. For example, in IntelliJ IDEA, our project is a bit large project. We have around like 80 modules. Like 70, 75 of them are hack slips, and few applications that actually run on the, so these are all the shortcuts. We have unit tests too. Now these are all munit unit tests. I did not build all of them. This is just for demo. I just set up a VM on my Windows machine. I can run in a very simple way. Today, munit tests can be run in IntelliJ IDEA. It's building, hopefully not. Yeah, it's not. So there are no changes. So I'm just showing that if you are trying to see how you can run your unit tests in IntelliJ IDEA, it's integrated. And the debugger is integrated, but I won't go into that right now because it tries to build the debug build and all. It takes time, but breakpoints and everything. There are some issues like local variables are not always displayed. It's the debugger's incapability, but IDEA integration is very well done. So I'm pretty much done. So these are the reference. I'm going to share this PowerPoint with the organizers so they can send this to other people. So any question and answers? I'm pretty much done.
I was wondering what's the status for WebStorm support. Last time I checked, it didn't work. So is that on the roadmap, or should it already work?
I'm sorry, I missed. What's the status of
support for WebStorm? Is that?
WebStorm is a separate IDE that JetBrains produces. It's different from IntelliJ IDEA, where the Haxe plugin works. But what they did is they enable the features of WebStorm to be downloaded as plugins in the IntelliJ IDEA. You can download Node.js, live edit, and HTML5, CSS, less, and all those things as separate plugins into the IntelliJ IDEA. But it is not integrated for Haxe debugging. I did not try it myself, the JS targets, but what I'm assuming is when they said that you can now edit the JavaScript code and all that stuff. What I'm assuming is if you have Haxe code and produce JavaScript output, you can now load those things into your project and edit them. So you have to try it out and definitely report the issues if you find some gaps, and we'll see if somebody has interest to contribute.
Okay, so you're saying it should work, but you haven't tested it. Okay.
I'm not saying it should work.
For me, so.
I'm a little doubtful about build and debug integration. It's their claim that it should work, not me.
Okay, thanks.
See, sure.
When you say Haxe debugging, you mean for CPP?
Yes.
Okay.
HXCPP and Flash targets of the OpenFL.
All right.
Lime toolchain, yeah.
Just following up on his, when it is doing the Hex CPP debugging, is it in IntelliJ IDE? I know TiVo had contributed a lot to the Hex CPP debug emitting. Is it Hex source level debugging,
yes,
or is it generated? Oh, so
it is Hex source level debugging.
And so when you're compiling for CPP target and you mouse over var something, you can see pop-ups like
yes,
13.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
I can show you offline. I don't want to take everybody's time right now, but I can show you offline the debugger on my system. Yeah.
In terms of popularity, it would probably make sense to try, if it's possible, to get the Haxe plugin to be installable in WebStorm, because like a lot of JavaScript developer would do some TypeScript or JavaScript in WebStorm, they won't bother installing IntelliJ. So if the Haxe plugin can be installed in WebStorm, that might be a good opportunity.
I'm not sure how do I say this, but I'm not saying we won't do it, but I'm not saying we will do it, because it's more driven by you know, the time and also, you know, how much.
I mean, that might be a question to ask.
If somebody
JetBrains.
Yes.
To say, is that something that is possible? Then we might then, if there's work to do, then we might figure who can do that. If it's easy, maybe they just have to check some box in the backend to allow that. Yeah, you can browse the plugins and install it. Okay, so it might require a bit of debugging. Yeah. Bandwidth Studio is pretty much the entire IntelliJ. It has all the Java code analysis and all that. Maybe some things like that, and dependencies are missing in WebStorm. So
one of the things I would like to mention is Jetbrains has not been very active, honestly, for the last 1.5 years on the Haxe plugin, 2 years. We tried to communicate a few times. So maybe something Haxe Foundation wants to ask them if they want to do a little bit on that side. But what I see is usually like people who are more interested in, because IDEA is more stable now and Haxe plugin is more robust and functional. As far as Haxe language itself is concerned, the gaps of specific target, if we post on the GitHub as part of the roadmap, I'm pretty sure somebody will take it up. And if it becomes priority at TiVo, definitely we will be able to contribute as well. But right now, yeah. So, but the WebStorm seems to be one big interest area. Somebody can try.
Hello. About 3 months ago, I started playing with Haxe, and I remember banging my head against IDEA for a solid day or two. Well, I gave up and I moved to Flash Develop. Is it still that hard? I mean, I wish there was a
project setup?
Yeah, it's a monster.
Yeah, project setup is one of the things I think somebody else also asked me, but we have a script that we use internally, a bash shell script to generate all these modules and all. It's not that hard. There is a decent documentation. Actually, IntelliJ IDEA's documentation is pretty good. If you see the project structure documentation, it's just one page. It gives you an idea how it is. You probably have to create a initial setup, exercise. It's not that straightforward. That part I like the Flash Develops project templates. But IntelliJ IDEA, you probably have to spend a little time in figuring out, generating a project. If it is not something you do every day, then that's fine. If you are doing something more frequently, a lot of projects, then you probably want a shell script or something. Yeah, we will publish our shell script. I'm thinking that's one of the things we discussed in the team. So somebody else can use it. We'll remove some of the stuff. Yeah, that's something I will do. I'll post it on GitHub. Yeah.
I was just going to suggest maybe a video of setting up would be useful for people who are interested.
For us, it's mostly that shell script does everything, and we just open the project. So I'm going to just share that. That would be, yeah.
Well, maybe by hand would be useful for people who didn't want to use the script or create their own ones.
Sure.
I think maybe a better idea is a Haxe lib with some support for IntelliJ, setting up IntelliJ projects. It's quite easy to build a command line tool.
Yeah.
Do that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Actually, it's not that hard. Yeah. But, yeah. Okay.
Hi. Do you know any drawback using the community edition of IntelliJ in combination with the plugin? So do you miss some features?
No.
No.
Everything works, yeah.
Anything else?
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome to Gunship.